They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. We are off to the races. This is episode number 5 for us, and we really thank you for joining us, for sharing us. I'm Jennifer Horn.
I'm Katie Gorka.
And we have
Van Fleet.
Yes, there she is. I love it. We're going to give you the most fabulous introduction because we have a very, very special guest joining us on this episode. Xi Van Fleet is with us. She is the author of the book, Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning. You can give her a follow at X Van Fleet on X and on all the platforms. And Xi, thanks so much for being with us. It is such a pleasure to get to know you and to chat with you today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, let's jump into your story. I always like to unpack, before we get to the top news of the day, I always like to find out how people get to where we're all talking today. And you have quite the interesting story. So tell us a little bit about what we should know about you and your life.
Well, I was born into the slavery of communism. And I lived through the entire 10 years of Cultural Revolution, from a first grade until I graduated from high school, and then was sent to the countryside to get my re-education from the peasants. So only after Mao died, I was able to go to college because the college was closed during the Cultural Revolution, and the only people can get in is through the Mao-style DEI. That means you have to be qualified politically. And academic excellence is not even considered. Anyway, so after I graduated from college, I was able to I was given a job to teach in college. And from there on, I met American teachers who come to my college to teach. And one of them helped me to come to America. So in 1986, I was able to come to America and my dream come true. But what's more important is that when I came here, I really, really, truly believed that I left communism behind me and that there's nothing for me to worry about because now I am in America. And so everything will be fine. I will live happily ever after. So I paid no attention to politics. And I've concentrated on fulfilling my American dream to get a job and buy a house and all that. And it's only lately that I noticed a lot of things that remind me of the Cultural Revolution. But it's only until 2020. And I just told myself I can no longer just stand by and watch the Red Guards, the communists burning down America. So that was the time in 2020 that I joined my local Republican committee in Loudoun County, Virginia. And from there on, I went to school board, and to my big surprise that my video went viral. I have to tell you, I was very surprised. I said, all I told people is that this is the Chinese Cultural Revolution replayed here. And it should be no surprise. Well, big surprise, because Americans know very little about communism, and they hardly know anything about the Chinese Cultural Revolution. So from there on, I made it my mission to educate America of the history that they were never taught. And now America is experiencing the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And to me, I just find that absolutely stunning that I lived through 2 revolutions, and it's the same Cultural Revolution. So that's my quick story.
So you also wrote the book. So tell us a little bit about how the book came about, and when did you write it?
Yes. So since my 2021, when my that 1-minute speech went viral, I got invited and by a lot of organizations and interviews on TV or on podcast. And the more I talk to the people, the more I realize that Americans just really need to know what happened in China. Only when they understand what happened in China, they can see that history is repeating. So in 2022, I decided I have to write a book. Never dreamed about writing a book. Never, ever entered my mind that one day I would write a book. But so this is, to me, it's God's will, really. There's nothing else I can say. So I quit my job in the spring of 2022, and I devoted my time in writing this book. And it's really a book to tell American people the parallels of the two cultural revolution that I lived through one, and I'm living through one with all of us, and warn people history is repeating, that it is a communist revolution. Woke is communists, and the DEI is communist. The goal is very simple: to destroy America.
You know, we talk a lot about that moment that wakes you up, that gets people engaged in the political process. And for a lot of people, it's seeing what's happening to our children. For other people, it might be government intervention into our life. I know COVID really woke a lot of people up. But what was that moment for you? What was that one thing that said, oh my gosh, this is communism. I need to start speaking out?
I think it's really the riot of 2022. The BMM, the Antifa. And that is, to me, a vivid replay of what I witnessed, of what the Red Guards did to China. And there's just no mistaking at all that this is history repeating. And even in the Chinese social media, WeChat, people were cheering. In China, they say, oh, finally, the Americans got their cultural revolution. They can see because they know history. Yet the Americans have no clue. Many of them just shocked. What happened to our country? I tell you what happened to our country. The communists is taking over our country.
So, Xi, you and I have been on a little bit of a similar timeline in these last few years, because I quit my job just a few months after you quit your job so that I could write a book, as you know, which I did with Mike Gonzalez. Kind of a similar idea to what you wanted to write about. Mine is called Next Gen Marxism, What It Is and How to Combat It. In the course of writing the book, one of the big questions that I find coming up for myself, and it's a question that I haven't really been able to answer, and that is, to what extent do you think China has actually played a role in making this Marxist, kind of revolution happen in the United States? Part of why I ask that is that, as you may know, there's been quite a lot of discussion here about a rather infamous book that was published in China in 1999, written by two Chinese army colonels, called Unrestricted Warfare. And what they argued was, because of the technological disparity between, say, the Chinese army and the U.S. Army, or basically anybody's army and the U.S. Army, right? Nobody could stand up to the U.S. Army. Therefore, going forward, war has to be fought by any other means and every other means, right? So they kind of argued that war would now be ongoing and everywhere. And they gave some examples of what are some of the things you can do to weaken your enemy, to weaken the United States. And they talked about hacking into government websites, disrupting financial institutions. Importantly, they talked about exploiting the West's open media and promoting social discord. So, we've talked about this. We talk about the role of TikTok. I'm just curious, do you have a strong feeling about to what extent China is helping to kind of aggravate the social discord we're seeing now?
Absolutely. You can see the CCP's hands in almost every movement, every protest, just every conflict in United States and in the West. And that is absolutely no doubt about it. And you mentioned about, hacking the government sites and also the, using the open democracy and exploit it and put their so-called Confucian institution in every in academia and high school and even in middle school and elementary school. And I think there was something going on in Loudoun County as well. And we allowed, that's my really, my take is all this were allowed and in many cases were encouraged. And so because communist China and the radical left here share one goal, the hatred of America.
You know, it's really interesting because I think we can all agree that, I mean, we see it. Marxists weaponize the youth to try to influence the culture. And I think something for conservatives, and we've touched on it before, but conservatives were asleep at the switch. We allowed our academic institutions to almost fall. But can you explain how the youth are really getting impacted? Is it social media? Is it these college professors, these institutions? Is it a combination of effort now to bring these kids together that we see protesting, that you saw during Black Lives Matter, that we're seeing now on college campuses? How did that all come together? Because I think truly we really were asleep as this was happening around us.
Yes, I think it's important for people to understand the Chinese Cultural Revolution was a youth revolution. It was carried out by the Red Guards, tens of millions of them, from as low as elementary school all the way to college. That's how the Cultural Revolution was started, by the Red Guards. And how could that be? It's because the CCP had 17 years of running the government school and totally controlled the youth. From 1949 to 1966, when the Cultural Revolution started, they have 17 years of totally indoctrinate a whole generation of young people. They know nothing of the real history. They know one thing only, that the party was their parents. We sang the song that the party was our real parent and Chairman Mao was our father. And so 17 years. Okay. So they could not think. They could not think, not to say critical. They could not think. They just follow the orders. And how about here? Here in America, we have decades of indoctrination. I would say started at least in the 60s that the radical Marxists took over the academia, and increasingly, and now we see it in high school and elementary school and even in kindergarten. And that's how they got our youth. And we, of course, the conservatives were asleep. So I think the educational system played the major role of indoctrinate and control the mind of the young people. And of course, media and entertainment, like Hollywood, they all play a role. But I think we just lost our educational system to the left. And that's what we see today, that we see this protest on campuses. We saw students who walk out, in Virginia, protest this issue, that issue from high school. It's because we no longer have control of our educational system.
One of the things that always strikes me when I meet people who have come from China, more recently, I always hear these stories that they come here and they had no idea about Tiananmen Square and what happened there. And the fact that you had thousands of student protesters on June 4th, 1989, stand up to protest against the communist regime, and then thousands of them got slaughtered, right? But my understanding is there's been just a complete eradication of that history from inside China. But I'm wondering if you have any sense today, I know you've lived here for a long time, but to the extent that you're able to follow what's going on in China, when people, these youth that you were talking about that helped bring about the Cultural Revolution, now they're all adults, they're middle-aged, if not actually elderly. Do they look at it differently? Do they, do you think they have regrets? Do you think that they understand what's happened to them in China? Is there a hunger for freedom? Or do you think people are still just fully bought into the communist narrative?
I think that one evidence is that Mao's portrait is still hanging on the tower of Tiananmen Square. That tells you that his ideology is still the supreme ideology of China, and in the school system they really wiped clean what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989, the massacre of tens of thousands of students. People have no idea. And a few young people know anything about the Cultural Revolution. They were taught that the Cultural Revolution was an anti-corruption campaign. And that's how they control the young people, is rewrite and or just wipe out inconvenient part of the history. And that's exactly what's going on in America. So teaching history or teaching fake history is the key for them to control the mind of people, not just young people, just people in general. And so, yeah, I would think that in China, those people who understand, they cannot really talk. But a lot of people absolutely bought into the ideology that the communists were their saviors. Now they have a good life. It's because the communists gave them gave them. So they twisted everything. Now they say that it was the communists who brought about the prosperity to China. And Xi Jinping said that in 30 years, the CCP was able to catch up the most advanced country in the world, United States. And of course, not mention that how they got there. It's the Western capital and then the technology that they stole. And indoctrination, absolutely, is how they control the people.
Xi Van Fleet is with us. She is the author of Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning, and definitely want to pick up the book. I'm very curious because, and this is where I totally look to you for direction on this, because as someone who watches all of this unfold in our country, I've always thought the influence of China, the influence of Marxism on our college campuses was all about creating chaos, right? Creating chaos to weaken the American way, to destroy American values, to make us easier maybe to overtake. But do you believe that the goal is actually to do that strategically, to overtake or to kill the idea of America? Or is it to spread communist thought? Is it an ideological or a strategic reason that this seems to be getting pushed from the CCP to people and trying to influence our youth?
Yeah, so I think it's important to know why Mao launched the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Mm-hmm. And because that revolution was a revolution against his own party and against his own government. Sounds kind of strange, right? He launched a revolution to take down the CCP and take down the government. Why? And that's something I did not understand until way after I came here, because I lived through it, had no idea why all this was happening. It's because power. It's because he felt like he was losing total control of his party and total control of his government. So he was willing to launch a revolution, to take down everything, to burn everything down to the ground, to build back better, in Biden's word.
Heard that before.
It is really all about power. So it's the same thing here. Same thing, exactly the same thing here. They're willing really to launch this cultural revolution, to burn everything down in order to bring about something new. What is that? That is totalitarianism. I think it is important to compare this two. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It did not make sense to me. Did not make sense to a lot of people who went through the Cultural Revolution. So many suffering and so much death. Why? Someone wants supreme power. And so people say, oh, okay, there you have Mao. We don't have Mao here. We don't have one single person. That doesn't matter. And we have a group of people. and I call them globalists. They want power. In order to have power, they are willing to burn our country to the ground so that they can have total control of everything.
Yeah, our domestic Marxists have been absolutely clear that power is what they're after. And I loved that quote that you had where you said it is about gaining power by first destabilizing a society through cultural subversion and upheaval. And that is absolutely what we're seeing.
Exactly.
But, you know, one of the things that Jen and I always love to sort of focus on and highlight is the fact that even we, you know, simple citizens living our everyday lives, there are things that we can do. I mean, you are just a beautiful exemplar of this. The fact that you have spoken out, your words have touched thousands of people. But I'm wondering, what other things can people do?
Yes, first of all, I think it's very important for people to understand what's really going on. I say what's going on is communist takeover of the West and of course America as well. And so to understand it is absolutely necessary. And by reading my book, by reading your book, people will understand we are no longer dealing with some crazy left. We are dealing with communists. And then we have to understand how do communists take power? They go by organizing. Mao organized the peasants and 90% of the Chinese population back then and promised them free land. And he was able to get to power with the support of the organized peasants. And so here too, how did Obama get to our White House? He started as a community organizer. They organize, and everything that we see on campuses, on the streets, they were organized by the communists. So, well, as the left, we talk about it, we regard each other as individuals. There's no need to organize. I hate to be organized because I was always organized when I was in China. You can't do a thing yourself. It's always you are called for doing this and that. It's always organized. But now we have to understand the nature of the game. So in order to defeat them, the right and the conservatives have to get organized. So that's what I think, that if we all fight like individuals, and we can't defeat them, we have to get organized. Mm-hmm. Like in Loudoun County, the parents got organized, and we started the parents' revolt, and that spread nationwide. And that's an example that now we can get power when we organize. So we have to do exactly what they did.
You know, I think you're absolutely right. Is we have to start realizing the rules that they're playing by, and then we have to play by those rules, and we have to work harder and play better. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of times conservatives want to kind of stick with what we've always done, and that's not working, and it requires real activation. So I know you just mentioned the parents of Loudoun County. I agree with you. That's a great example. What are some of the other examples that we can pull from for hope that we can actually make a difference? Because this is really clawing back, especially when it comes to our educational institutions, something that has been gone for 40 years. I mean, maybe even more than that. So what are some of those bright spots that you can share with us where we can see that we are making a difference if we continue the fight?
Well, sometimes I woke up really full of hope. Sometimes, I feel like so in despair because things are not good. We know that. And so a lot of times I was asked by people that, do you think there's a hope? And I say, yes. How do I think so? It's because I have met so many people. Really, I have been going around the country and talked to so many individuals, and a lot of the people share the same story as I, that was never, my mother was never politically involved, paid no attention to politics. Now they say what happened to school, what happened to their kids. A lot of them got involved because they understand is at the stake. So I think we have a lot of more people got involved than we think because, the leftists, they are all always more noisy, and we see them on the streets, feel like they absolutely are taking over the country. But I think at the same time, we have to realize a lot of people, a lot of ordinary citizens are now getting engaged. So I think that's the hope. And we just have to do more. And I believe in politics is local. And I believe to win this war, we have to get back our school. So school board, I think is the most important battlefield for us. We cannot win this war if we don't take back our schools. So I tell everyone, go to school board, run for school board, and support people who share your values for school board. That's how we're going to take back this country.
So one of the things that I've often said is that one of our most important allies in this fight against tyranny, against Marxism, against communism in this country are those who have lived under communism. Because they know firsthand. Yes. I mean, my co-author grew up in Cuba. My husband's parents were imprisoned in Hungary. It's like people like you who are the most passionate because you understand how fragile freedom is and how precious it is. But I'm kind of concerned. So that would make me think that some of the many Chinese Americans who live here would be natural allies in this fight. But as I was telling you, I met yesterday with a Chinese American activist, sort of / journalist, and she was saying to me that most Chinese Americans do not want to get really active or involved. They, many of them still have family in China, so they're concerned. So what's your sense? I mean, I think you're an anomaly for how outspoken you are. But is your sense overall, are the Chinese Americans going to be our allies in this fight? Do you think, for example, do they vote Republican? Will they vote against the tyranny of today's radical left?
This is such an excellent question, Katie. I have to tell you that majority of Chinese vote blue. Why? You would think that, people like me, they suffer from communism. They know what oppression, what totalitarianism is like. Why they vote for Democrats? That is a very good question. Why? Because the identity politics, the victimology is so powerful. It is so powerful. People come to this country and then they were told that they were new immigrants. They're not white. They're from different culture. Therefore, they become victims. And when you become victims, become marginalized, you need protectors. And who are the protectors? The Democrats. The Democratic Party will protect you. And so many people bought into it, including a lot of Chinese. And that is the battle we're fighting.
But now so many Asians are being discriminated against as being white adjacent.
Yeah. Yes. And now the wake-up call is, now my kids can't go to Harvard or can't go to Thomas Jefferson High School. And more are waking up, but it takes time. But that's what I'm telling you. It's they bought into this protection by the Democrats. A lot of them just come in, just automatically vote for blue. And what a lot of the Chinese friends told me or talked about me, how she thinks she's white. That's how then if you vote Republican, you think you are white. And also in the social media, a lot of people say you will never be white. And that's how they see this. And that is the power of political identity. And that ideology is very, 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 very potent. And they get a lot of people. But a lot of people have just learned the hard way. Okay, so there are a lot of Chinese now realize, okay, when the Asians were attacked and by whoever, mostly black, well, the press won't say anything. And they say Asian hate, stop Asian hate, only when there is a story that the Asian was attacked by a white person. Mm-hmm. So more and more people have realized it. They're learning it the hard way, but I'm glad they're learning it.
You know, I think the left obviously loves victims because victims can be controlled. And so that's why I think they try to make these the people that come here, or that people that aren't the white people that they want to make them victims so that they can control them. But what I've seen,
yes,
and maybe I am a forever optimist, is that people are slowly waking up because it has gotten that bad and people have voted a certain way for so long and they are not getting that protection that they were guaranteed. And you look at some of the polling numbers and you've got 46% of Latinos now in this country who are supporting Trump. Only 40% support Biden. You've got Black voters, 23% now supporting Trump when only 6% supported him in 2016. So it is a slow wake up. But I think it is really happening because we're seeing a shift where now we realize we don't need we don't need protecting. We just need opportunity. And that's what I think the Republican Party is presenting to people, I hope. So I do think people are waking up. And when we talk about hope, my greatest hope is talking with you, because you are the perfect example of someone who survived this and you're now using your voice to come here and tell people your story. And it's absolutely amazing. And I hope that we can continue to get you out on every platform because you have the most important message for Americans, particularly young Americans. And I just want to thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the message and spread the message. And I know, I do understand I have a special role to play because when I talk about communism, I was not talking about something I learned from books.
Right.
I'm talking from my lived experience, using the left terminology, my lived experience. So you sit down and listen.
And we thank you so much. We hope to have you back again and chat with you. I know this story is not going away. It's only going to get more and more dominant and important. And thank you all for being with us. We love having you here. Don't forget, you can check out Katie Gorka, katiegorka.org. Get her book, Next Gen Marxism, also a great piece along these same subject lines. And you can follow me, Jennifer Horn, on Twitter, X, and Truth Social, Jennifer Horn Radio on Facebook and on Instagram. And thank you all for being with us. Please review the podcast, share it with your friends. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And thanks for being with us on our latest episode of the Happy Women Podcast.